Okay guys, this very last hand that I want to look at here is with our pair of queens on the cutoff, and I want you guys to analyze this for yourself. I'll just run it through one time. I want you to mentally explain exactly what every single player is doing. Okay, what my move is, what line I'm playing post flop, and look at the pot odds. Be aware of what my opponents could potentially call with which potential draws. And we'll play this out one time as the last example hand, and then I will run it back and comment on it. Okay, so what was the move that I just made there? Why was the big blind's call dubious? What does he do to me right there? Okay, and what was the total line of play? Good. If you guys have got that clear in your mind, you have a really good understanding of everything that we've covered, and are well on your way to becoming a very solid player in a very short amount of time. So back to the action in a 100, and the whale min raises here. It's the fold min raise, fold, and this is a cold call. So he makes a 2-bet, irrespective of the bet size. It's called a min raise, weak, smaller bet, and yeah, he makes that min raise and he gets cold called. Okay, and we make a 3-bet. And in this case, it is a 3-bet squeeze. So we have an open raiser, a cold caller, and we squeeze basically the open raiser between myself and this player here. So I make a 3-bet squeeze to 3 times the raise size plus 1 per cold caller, bringing it up to 8. I could even made it 9 if I wanted to throw in the blind or 2. Okay, and yeah, having queens, maybe you make it a bit lower from time to time. Hoping to get called and then get aggressive on the flop. But again, with queens, they are very vulnerable, of course, if you see kings or aces. And yeah, again, keeping your bet size standard keeps you unreadable. And also no problem with taking that down right now. So we make it 8, 3-bet squeeze, and the button folds. It gives us the best position on all post-flop streets. So a lot of times you want to raise here just on principle in order to get last position post-flop. Okay, and we get 1 fold from the small blind, and yet again this guy calling 83% of all hands does what he does best and calls. And why is that dangerous? Well, because you had a min raise guy here. It is a bit of a fish, but he could, this guy here or this guy here, could re-raise over the top. That's pretty risky business. So he just calls the 3-bet, and again, out of position, all post-flop streets, and he's not closing the betting. And if one of these guys re-raise, and worst case scenario, it's a re-raise and I re-raise over the top, so he 4-bets and then I 5-bet, for example, this guy's going to have to fold everything but aces or kings. And yeah, this is why you can let that go in this spot in the big blind without a very, very, very strong hand. Let's see what our note is here. We got him greened. Cold call with 2-5 offsuit in middle position, flop 2 pair and only called and bet half on the turn. So, playing 2-5-0 for example and calling, as you see here, 83% of the time. Good. So we 3-bet squeeze. He makes this really dubious call out of position, and play continues. These guys both let it go. And again, you see this. 44% VPIP, right? Limp call 67%, but limp raise never. Okay, that was a min raise, so wouldn't exactly apply, but more or less. This guy here at 37%, again VPIP, overcalling 42% of the time, or cold calling. Just really weak play. We flop the overpair on a paired board, and it is a non-suited paired board. And the only problem is this guy's playing 83% of all hands. So we're a bit worried that this whack job, as he was playing 2-5 offsuit, could have been playing any 8 here, to call our 3-bet squeeze out of position. That does happen when you're playing against fish. So this is a situation where you are potentially way ahead, way behind. Okay, if he does have the 8, you gotta pull a queen out of the hat. If you don't, you're gonna be, taken out by the fish. Luckily, he's small stacked, but if this fish is deep stacked or big stacked, that's quite dangerous. So here we are in position, 20 big blinds in the middle, non-suited paired board on the flop, and we'll get back to the action. So our fish bets out, more or less 1/3 pot here. Okay, giving us 4.4 to 1 odds if we are on the 6-7 draw, for example, which would be more than enough to go ahead and call that for the straight draw. But what we want to do here is float the guy. So we want to get the rest of his money in here. At this point, I mean, if he had the 8, I would expect him to either check, call, or bet a bit more, being a bit fishy. So he makes this little funky 3rd bet, and we opt for simply a call. Alright, so we want to so-called floating. So we call in position on the flop. Okay, turn comes, and now our board is 2 suited. And if, for example, he was on the 3-4, he's going to have his straight draw to that. If he's on any flush draw, that's going to be there as well. If he's on the 8, we're simply toast, and you gotta chalk that one up to variance for this guy's play. But he is small stacked, and we're not really worried about that. Big stacked maybe a bit more, but like I said, we're in position, and we call his flop bet to see what he does on the turn. And here it comes. It's a big monster check, and so we have the opportunity to what? Yes, to float him. Right, so we call the flop bet in position, he checks, we bet. We call the flop bet in position, he bets, we raise. So float. Good, so 2 suited, paired board. If he's on the 8, we're toast. If he's not, we're looking real good. And we do need to protect here against draws. 6-7's on board. Again, like I said, this whack job could be playing 3-4. Any suited ace. Basically any overcards. I mean, if he is on ace king, for example, any ace, any king, X hand, and one of those cards hit, we're in real trouble. So we've also got to protect against overcards. It's a place where we need to protect. So it's a float, but it's also a protecting move and also a bet for value, because I think we're good here. And we make a strong 3/4 pot bet, and that would of course also put him all in. So we don't push that because it scares these kind of guys off. We just make that bet, and it could even been 24, just to make it more suiting. And he then decides to go ahead and check fold the turn, and we take it down. So that concludes our sub-series on bet types, moves, and pot manipulation. I do hope that all the concepts we covered are very, very useful for your game. I hope that the examples we showed you guys are good for the practical application of how to implement these moves into your game. More importantly, I hope that all of this shows you how other players think and how you should also yourself be thinking based on mathematics, based on strategy, and based on tactics. All of which we've covered, I think, in pretty great detail. But as mentioned previously, almost every single concept presented here, except for maybe limping, could be broken down into multiple videos and really expounded upon. And according to need, that's what we'll definitely do in the future. But for now, I think you've seen everything that you're going to see, especially no-limit games. This would pertain specifically to cash games, and very specifically to the game of no-limit Texas Holdem. But as mentioned before, the principles that we've covered definitely apply to pot limit Omaha, although of course you're going to be playing different hands, and it's a completely different game. But the moves as such, the bet types as such, the lines of play as such, pot manipulation principles as such. Yeah, slow playing, by the way, never do that. Pretty much never do that in pot limit Omaha. But slow playing in Holdem does, of course, function, but not on very so-called wet boards. Right? Only on dry, non-connected, non-suited boards. Remember your opponent's pain levels. Remember that you're not just playing your cards, you're not just playing your hand, but you're playing your position as well. You're playing your opponent's, right? You're playing the table conditions. You're playing your image. You're playing so much more than what you actually hold more often than not. And that's what a long-term winner does. He thinks outside of the box. He doesn't take current poker theory for absolute truth. He mixes it up. Now, for beginners, you should, as mentioned before, stick to the book. All right, pick a open raise size of between 3 and 4, and do that all the time. Pick a steal size between 2.5 and 3.5, ideally probably just 3, and stick to that. Pick a 3-bet size, basically 3 times the open raise plus 1 per cold caller, and stick to that. 4 bets, 2.5 to 3 times the previous 3-bet. If there's a 3-bet and a caller, you're not any longer making a 4-bet, normal 4-bet, unless you're super deep stacked. You're pushing all in because of the principle of pushing or folding anytime a given move would commit half of your stack or more. And as mentioned, I'll just reiterate that very often you're going to push, as we saw in many of these example hands, or you should push, when your stack is at the pot size, or even when your move will commit a third of your stack, and then in the coming street you'll only have the pot size left in your stack, for example. All these things you need to really keep in mind. Keep in mind the different principles of way ahead, way behind, right? Not betting on the river when your opponents can't call with a worse hand. Keep that at the forefront. Again, playing live, I can't stress enough how important pain levels are. I can't stress enough how important player profiling is, assessing the knowledge, right? The knowledge of your opponents, what they play, really being alert when you're playing, keeping tabs on how much they bet, where they bet, if their bet sizing is representative of their perception of strength of their hand. All these different things you keep in the back of your mind, and then have fun, right? In the end, the best way I would say to go about, if this is the first time you've seen this information, the best way to go about this is to review these videos in sections. Have a look at certain aspects of it, then watch that again and again, implement that to your game, and as always, like I said, have fun. You don't want to be one of these ego type of guys, that say, yeah, I saw this Winner in a Week coach Dylan talking about, the mathematical background behind all the different moves, and this guy, only min raised and shouldn't have done this, that, and the other, and then you hit the roof, right? You go on tilt, and you piss some people off, and they end up, either playing better or teaching you a lesson outside of the club if you're playing underground, and both of those are definitely negative EV for you in the long run. So again, have fun. Play at a level that you can handle. Always maintain proper bankroll management. And like I said, enjoy it. Really enjoy it. A good approach with all this is also, to play shorter sessions if you are playing online. Study kind of the main concepts here before you start your session. Play your session, then review it on, I play, for example, with Holdem Manager. I can only recommend it. Review your key hands, right? Review all your big hands where you had big losses and big wins. And also review your marginal hands from time to time, especially because those marginal hands are where you're going to be losing, kind of leaking a lot of money in the long run. And see if you could have played that differently. See if you, with all these different moves that I showed you guys in the example hands, all the different lines of play, see if you could have implemented some of that in different spots. See if you should have bet more or less. If you should have protected or value bet. If you were way ahead, way behind, in a way ahead, way behind situation and didn't realize it, right, and played it incorrectly, potentially. All these things after the fact, check that out. Use our tools, use our bet sizing calculators, our pot odds calculators, and all the different online calculators that I've created and or compiled for you guys. And with time, all this will become second nature. But again, take it in parts. Don't be too overwhelmed. Enjoy it and kind of grow with the game. Like I said, and as long as you keep your ego out of the equation, enjoy it. Play in your means. Right, have a good time. All you can do is win in the long run. With that, I'd like to end the sub-series. Again, this is Dylan. Appreciate you guys being here, and I'm looking forward to working with you in the coming videos where we'll be covering different types of strategies for No Limit Texas Hold'em based on your total stack size. And then we'll be moving into pot limit Omaha, as well as 7 stud and 5 card draw.